Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Buckle up your seatbelts, conservatives. We've got good martinis today. Probably didn't think we'd get there 48 hours ago, but that's where we are right now. And we'll see where the rest of the week goes. Unfortunately, it's nowhere near Friday yet. But, Jim, it was just yesterday we were talking about how multiple Senate Democrats had been very, very quiet ever since the initial letter was transmitted from Dianne Feinstein to the FBI. And even after Dr. Christine Ford went public with her accusations against Brett Kavanaugh in the Washington Post over the weekend. But all of a sudden, on Tuesday, they emerged with a very consistent message. And that's that before anything else happens here, we've got to have the FBI fully investigate this accusation. Here's Kamala Harris, as we played yesterday. This was from CBS this morning.
I believe that that the FBI, Nora, to your point, it should be compelled to do its job in terms of completing their background investigation.
Dick Blumenthal said the same thing to Rachel Maddow. And Jim, surprise, surprise, we mentioned yesterday that the attorney for Christine Ford, Deborah Katz, had not responded to the invitation for her to testify Monday before the Senate Judiciary Committee. And then last night, we get the letter to Grassley from Katz saying it's not going to happen. Her client's not going to show up until the FBI conducts and completes an investigation, at which point Chuck Grassley says, well, she has the opportunity to testify Monday. We are not going to postpone this any farther. So we already have folks who had been a little bit concerned about the allegation, like Jeff Flake and Bob Corker, who wanted to hear from this witness saying, look, if she doesn't appear at this hearing on Monday, we're ready to just move on with the confirmation process here. And so the fact that the Democrats and Deborah Katz are in such lockstep here, and especially the fact that the Democrats went first and then Katz is coming through with this same demand as well, shows that there's probably quite a bit of coordination going on here.
Yeah, but this is a kind of strange turn of events considering where we were 48 hours ago, Greg. At that time, the accuser's lawyer was on CNN saying that she was ready to testify. She was willing to testify. And in fact, the tone of the comments was a complaint that the Judiciary Committee had not yet reached out to her. The committee does so. And all of a sudden it's, no, I'm not willing to testify until an FBI investigation is complete. Never mind that the FBI has already said that they do not intend to investigate. There's no allegation of a federal crime. And that Kavanaugh himself has already been through 6 FBI background checks over the course of his career, including one for this particular nomination. So it's really not clear what they think an FBI investigation would uncover or unveil that would differ from what the committee would be hearing Monday, or why anyone's testimony would be different after the FBI's investigation. You're seeing some people say, Greg, that you look back to the hearings of Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill. The FBI took statements from both of them. The FBI can take statements from both of those folks, but it would really kind of be redundant from the same thing that's going to happen on Monday, which is to put everyone under oath and take their statements. So it's not clear why someone who seemed to be very eager to testify on Monday would suddenly be putting all these preconditions and kind of indicators of reluctance on Wednesday. As noted, in the Washington Post report, the accuser already took a lie detector test. This indicates she's ready, or that she was ready to share her story. I think if she says, I'm willing to tell my story to the Washington Post, but not to the Senate Judiciary Committee, then Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee will become much more skeptical of her story. She has the opportunity. She has made clear she believes this is important information for both the committee to have, for the U.S. Senate to have, and for the country to have. To suddenly backtrack and indicate that she does not want to do this doesn't make any sense. I also saw some comment appearing at the same table as Kavanaugh, and Grassley has said, what are you talking about? We'll have them at different times. There's no indication they would, run into each other, or she would have to face him or anything like that. This really looks like a sudden and rapid backtrack. Now, again, maybe she testifies Monday, maybe she doesn't. I assume if you're a Democrat and you wish to deter the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, you really need her testifying on Monday. Now, it could be open hearing, it could be closed hearing. I think it's safe to assume, Greg, that we cannot have members of the public there based on what happened in the other confirmation hearings. But it's entirely understandable if she would not want to be in front of the cameras and suddenly become have everybody in America live tweeting while she testifies. It's completely understanding if she wants to have a certain amount of decorum during this process. But to not show up would probably increase a great deal of skepticism amongst that, Greg. And I've heard, through the rumor mill that if she doesn't show up, it's pretty darn likely you'll get all 51 Republican senators voting for Kavanaugh. Now, the other interesting, possibility, though, is that this might be enough for the Joe Manchins, for the Joe Donnellys, for the Heidi Heitkamps of the world to say, you know what, I can't vote for somebody with this kind of allegation unresolved. It's unfortunate she didn't come forth to testify, but I'm just not comfortable voting for it. That's I guess you could say, an understandable position, not necessarily one I would agree with, Greg. And the other thing I would note is that, we all this entire time we've been looking at these three particular senators because they voted for Neil Gorsuch, and that they seem like they're all for re-election this year. They all represent red states. They would be the ones most likely to vote for Kavanaugh. Well, here we are. It's getting to mid to late September, Greg. Manchin looks pretty good. Heitkamp looks like she's kind of toast either way. And Donnelly's the only one who's really in a hard-fought, could go either way type race. So he may be alone in thinking that his vote will be decisive in this one. So that may be putting the cart before the horse. Anything could happen Monday, and I think it's likely to be a circus. But if she does not show up, I think a lot of people will look at her claims a lot more skeptically.
And Jim, this may be common knowledge by the time a lot of folks hear this, but you led off the Morning Jolt today with another significant piece of news. Explain what another student from that era had to say about the allegation.
Sure. Well, the account from the accuser was that there were 4 boys at this party. She mentioned Kavanaugh. She mentioned Mark Judge. Mark Judge issued his statement saying he does not remember anything like this or ever attending a party like this. This morning brought the news that Patrick J. Smith, who also attended Georgetown Prep, has reached out to the committee. He signed a letter to the, saying before the allegations against Kavanaugh were made public, saying that Kavanaugh is singularly qualified. But then he says, there's a new statement out saying, I understand I have been identified by Dr. Christine Blasey Ford as the person she remembers as PJ, who supposedly was present at the party she described in her statements to the Washington Post. I am issuing this statement today to make it clear to all involved that I have no knowledge of the party in question, nor do I have any knowledge of the allegations of improper conduct she has leveled against Brett Kavanaugh. So she mentioned there were 4 boys. 3 of them we've heard from and have said they have no knowledge of this, no memory of this. I suppose there's still that 4th person. She said in one account that there was another girl at the party. It's always the possibility of another shoe dropping, but as of this moment, there are no witnesses who are corroborating her account of events.
Yeah, again, with the Democratic senators and Deborah Katz pretty much in lockstep with the argument that this has to be postponed, kind of raises a bit of a red flag, too. And now we've got even more evidence that that is the case as we shift to our second good martini. The fact that this is what at least one Democrat is saying is not good, but it does add some transparency to the process. This is from Politico magazine. Mazie Hirono, Democrat from Hawaii, is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and she was on the Off Message podcast with Politico. And here's what part of the story in Politico magazine related to this podcast says. If Kavanaugh's nomination fizzles and President Donald Trump has to name a replacement, Hirono says he better find someone whom she considers less of a conservative ideologue, or else prepare for Senate Democrats, especially if they win a majority in November's elections, to keep the court seat vacant until after the 2020 election. Quote, I think we've had those kinds of vacancies before, and we certainly had over a 1-year vacancy with Merrick Garland, said Hirono. Quote, so the world does not come to an end because we don't fill all the nominees. Jim, so obviously the Democrats, making no secret, they want payback over how Mitch McConnell handled the vacancy on the Supreme Court following the death of Justice Scalia.
Greg, it's not often I praise another podcast, but we should give credit where it's due. The Off Message podcast, living up to the name, isn't it? Look, if you're Hirono and if you're any Senate Democrat, you want the whole message to be, we are concerned about this alleged crime. We want to get to the bottom of this. We are not interested in playing political games or ensuring our ability to block more of Trump's nominees. Now, it just so happens that our efforts to delay would probably take this out further beyond the midterm elections. And who knows, we might end up controlling the Senate after the midterm elections. I think America was not terribly enamored of having only 8 justices on the Supreme Court for a year. We got through it. It was indeed not the end of the world. I probably have said this many times myself, Greg, but you think about it, it's not the end of the world is really the most faint praise you could say about something. Right? I mean, really, short of full-scale nuclear exchange, almost nothing represents the end of the world. And as a result of that, that's really setting the bar about as low as you possibly can for a bad outcome. Literally, not even war on the Korean Peninsula would be the end of the world. Some humans would survive, but it would be very, very bad for millions of people. If we had a lengthy, right now there are 8 justices, right? They're begin first Monday in October. They probably are going to begin without a 9th justice. This means a couple of cases are going to have 8 justices, but we will see how things shake out with that in the Kavanaugh confirmation. If you went 2 years, you'd probably have more major cases coming along and getting a 4-4 split and not really being resolved the way the judiciary is set up and supposed to. Although I would point out, Greg, 2 things. First of all, if they block all Trump Supreme Court nominees for 2 years, I don't see any reason to think they would not extend that attitude to all the lower court nominees that the president puts forth and either confirm none of them or very few of the other judicial appointments that President Trump has made. So, look, if the Democrats take the Senate this fall, and right now I'm skeptical, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, you could be looking at no judicial confirmations for a 2-year period. And I don't think that's good for the country, never mind whether it's good for the conservative priority of how the judiciary should be making its decisions. The other thing that kind of comes out of that, though, Greg, I kind of wonder if you're Hirono or any other Democratic senator, and you're like, oh, well, we'll block them for 2 years. How do you like them apples, huh? We'll do Merrick Garland, you guys. Then there'll have a lot of 4-4 splits. How do you like that? I hope Ruth Bader Ginsburg's feeling well. I hope Stephen Breyer's feeling well. He's 80. You could go from a 4-4 split to a 4-3 split without much warning, or conceivably even a 4-2 split. And this, the Democratic Senate refusing to confirm any of Trump's nominees. I think the country would be much better off if cooler heads prevail. If you're a senator and you like the judge, confirm. If you don't like the judge, don't confirm. I think that's probably, you can say looking back, that's what should have happened to Merrick Garland. Although the way this process has gone out for Brett Kavanaugh, maybe Merrick Garland is thinking, thank God they never had hearings of me. At least I didn't have my name smeared and I get to be happily remaining on the federal judiciary with my reputation intact.
Jim, just a question, because I really don't know the answer to this. I remember when John Roberts was nominated to replace Sandra Day O'Connor, and then Chief Justice Rehnquist died, and President Bush moved the Roberts nomination to fill that vacancy. Justice O'Connor stayed on until Sam Alito then got confirmed. So would Kennedy stay on until he's actually got a replacement confirmed, or would there actually be a vacancy there? Do you know how that plays out?
My understanding is once you resign, you resign. You're
okay.
out.
Okay.
I don't, and he has officially resigned from the court. So as of now, there are 8 justices. And the expectation would be, if it had a normal confirmation period, that Kavanaugh would join the court, if not right as they begin on the first, I guess it's just about 2 weeks from now, either, shortly thereafter, and the court schedule would not be disrupted. My understanding is that the really good, consequential cases tend to come later in the term. And it's the easy ones that kind of, start off them. But who knows? I think the other possibility would be somebody. I'm sure you'd see somebody argue bring Kennedy out of retirement, but if Kennedy wanted to remain being a Supreme Court justice, I think he wouldn't have retired.
All right, let's move on to our third good martini now, Jim. And we talk a lot about the midterm elections in terms of the balance of the Senate. We talk about the House in more general terms because there's obviously 435 races. It's a little bit hard for us to stay on top of each one in a podcast like this. But we're going to focus on one particular race today, and that's in Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District. It's an open seat. It's currently held by House Speaker Paul Ryan, who is not running for re-election. The Republican nominee there is a guy named Brian Stile. The Democratic nominee there is a guy named Randy Bryce, who is most famous for his mustache, I believe, at this point. There's a new ad out. It's not from the Stile campaign. It's from a third-party organization, and it features James Bryce. That's right, the brother of Randy Bryce, who is in favor of the Republican winning this race.
My name is James Bryce. I've been a cop for over 23 years. FBI statistics show that assaults against law enforcement have gone up in the last few years. From my perspective, this has been motivated in part by cop-hating rhetoric. I've been to 3 cops' funerals in the last 2 years. two were shot while trying to protect people from violent criminals. When people refer to police officers as terrorists, that hits a little close to home. I don't think people want to be represented by someone who has shown contempt for those in law enforcement. That's one of the many reasons why I'm voting for Brian Stile for Congress.
Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And so what he doesn't specifically say there, but you can see in the TV ad, is the fact that his own brother is the one who called the cops terrorists and has been arrested, in Ferris Bueller terms, 9 times. So, Jim, going to be a fun Thanksgiving at that house.
You know, I was about to say, I guess this candidate can no longer run as a favorite son candidate. But apparently the mother has issued a statement that basically about, boys, stop it. Stop it. Stop attacking your brother in attack ads. I will turn this car around right now. And you can't help but feel, sympathy for the poor mother watching one brother tape an attack ad against the other one. Having said that, it's an old saying, I think it was James Carville who used to say the difference between a positive ad and a negative ad is that a negative ad has a fact in it. It's not merely, I believe the children of the future, teach them well and they will lead the way. But everything that is in the ad is factual and accurate. This is indeed a gentleman who is a police officer. I don't doubt that he is speaking truthfully and from the heart about his views about politicians who demonize cops. The quote of his brother is accurate, and the arrest record of his brother is accurate. So in my mind, this is fair game. This is not saying, he used to feed his mashed potatoes to the dog under the table or any of the other kind of, childhood level, this is why my brother is a stinker type comments. This is about his public record, the things he has said publicly and the things he has done that are part of the public record. So it strikes me as a completely fair ad. I can understand why, Democrats would be deeply upset about it, but I think they're not upset about it because it's unfair or out of bounds. And, boy, those terms sound so quaint in light of what's going on in Washington. Greg, they probably don't like because it's effective, right? I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, this guy's a union leader. Oh, okay, all right, he's, but then you find out that he's, called cops this and been arrested so many times. Maybe we'll people might recoil. People might say, I'm sure I like this guy anymore. I didn't know this kind of stuff about him, and that's, makes the public see him differently. So I think, and the other thing is that, look, if his brother is willing to criticize him in this public a manner, this doesn't happen to every candidate. We will see how things shake out from here. But boy, oh boy, that's, whoever made this ad, I want to give them a little tip of the cap. There's attack ads, and then there's that's going to leave a mark attack ads.
Jim, how much more fun would our childhood have been as political junkies if instead of just complaining to mom or dad when our siblings did something we didn't like, we could produce 30-second attack ads? And, I shared a room with my brother. He was much neater than me. He could have cut an attack ad against me saying, Greg Corombos is the messiest brother Upper Michigan has ever seen. And I could fire back with, Mark Corombos is ridiculously tidy. His expectations are completely unreasonable.
Greg, the way you're describing that, you make it sound like there's a 100% certainty that I didn't run attack ads against my brother. Paul Geraghty gets to stay up until 9:30. But when Jim was his age, his bedtime was at 9. Is that a policy that strikes you as fair? This advertisement sponsored by Jim Geraghty for a later bedtime. That was it. So that'd be kind of fun. And I think someone once did if every industry did attack ads the way political ads do, and it was like, Burger King says you can trust what's in their hamburgers, but can you really? And people point out that if that was true, no one would eat at fast food joints if they were constantly demolishing. So why are people cynical about politics? Well, once every 2 years, everybody puts enormous efforts into getting you to believe the worst possible things about them. Having said that, having your own brother trash you on local television seems like not the normal set of circumstances for a candidate.
Oh, good times. Hopefully we've given some young people some inspiration for their making their case to their parents.
You got cell phone cameras these days, kids, online video editing software. Oh, my God. I can't let my kids hear this because my sons will totally do this to each other.
It would make disciplining them so much more fun, though. All right, I side with you. Your ad was better.
So, son, I hate to tell you, but your approval rating dropped 10 points in the last 3 weeks.
Oh, good times. Jim?
I mean, this is why you really should listen to this podcast. It's parenting advice.
3 good martinis and a great idea at the end. Fantastic day today. Talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. And be sure to tune in again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.